Welcome back to our series in the Gospel of Matthew. Today we're diving into chapter 8, where the focus shifts from Jesus' teachings in the Sermon on the Mount to his miracles and acts of healing. In this chapter, we'll see Jesus' power over sickness, nature, and even spiritual forces. Let's dive in. Matthew chapter 8 begins with a remarkable act of compassion. As Jesus comes down from the mountain, a man with leprosy approaches him and says, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Leprosy was not only a painful disease, but it also made the person an outcast, both socially and religiously. Jesus, moved with compassion, reaches out and touches the man, saying, "I am willing, be clean." And immediately, the man's leprosy is cured. What stands out is that Jesus doesn't just speak healing. He touches the man, a man who likely hadn't felt the touch of another person for a long time. Jesus shows that God's power to heal is not distant or detached, but personal and full of compassion. The miracle demonstrates not only Jesus' authority over sickness, but his heart for the marginalized and forgotten. His healing extends beyond the physical. It restores dignity and inclusion. Next, we encounter a Roman centurion who comes to Jesus on behalf of his servant who is paralyzed and in terrible suffering. The centurion asks Jesus to heal his servant, and when Jesus offers to come to his house, the centurion responds with a remarkable display of faith. He says, "Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word and my servant will be healed." The centurion understands authority. He knows that just as he can command his soldiers and they obey, Jesus can command sickness and it must obey. Jesus is astonished by the centurion's faith, saying, "Truly, I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith." And at that moment, the servant is healed. This story highlights the power of faith, particularly the faith of someone who wasn't even part of the Jewish community. Jesus' kingdom is for all people, and faith is the key to experiencing his power. This centurion reminds us that true faith is not about being religious or having a special status. It's about trusting in Jesus' authority and power. After healing the centurion's servant, Jesus goes to Peter's house, where he finds Peter's mother-in-law sick with a fever. He touches her hand, and the fever leaves her. She immediately gets up and begins to serve him. That evening, many who were demon-possessed or sick were brought to Jesus, and he healed them all. Matthew tells us that this was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. He took up our infirmities and bore our diseases. Here we see Jesus as the fulfillment of God's promise to bring healing to his people. His compassion and power are on full display, and he responds to all who come to him in need. These healings remind us of God's desire to restore us, not just spiritually, but also physically and emotionally. Jesus' miracles are a glimpse of the complete restoration that will come when God's kingdom is fully realized. After these miracles, a teacher of the law approaches Jesus and says, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." But Jesus responds, "Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." Another disciple asks to follow Jesus, but wants to first bury his father. Jesus replies, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." These interactions reveal something important. Following Jesus is costly. It requires total commitment and a willingness to leave behind comfort, security, and even family obligations. Jesus doesn't sugarcoat the realities of discipleship. It's a call to put him first above everything else. Jesus is inviting us to consider the cost of following him. It's not always an easy path, but it's the one that leads to life and purpose. Next, Jesus and his disciples get into a boat and cross the lake. Suddenly, a furious storm comes up, and the waves are sweeping over the boat. While the disciples are panicking, Jesus is asleep. They awake him saying, "Lord, save us! We're going to drown!" Jesus replies, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" Then he gets up, rebukes the winds and the waves, and everything becomes completely calm. The disciples are amazed and ask, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him." This miracle shows Jesus' authority over nature itself. It's a powerful reminder that even in the midst of life's storms, Jesus is in control. The disciples' fear and doubt are met with Jesus' calm power. He is with them, even when the storm rages. When we face our own storms, we can trust that Jesus is in control. His presence brings peace, no matter how overwhelming our circumstances may seem. Finally, Jesus arrives on the other side of the lake, in the region of the Gadarenes. There, 2 demon-possessed men come out of the tombs to meet him. These men are so violent that no one could pass by that way. The demons in the men recognize Jesus and shout, "What do you want with us, Son of God? Have you come to torture us before the appointed time?" They beg Jesus to send them into a herd of pigs nearby, and Jesus says, "Go." The demons leave the men and enter the pigs, which then rush down a steep bank into the lake and drown. The townspeople, upon seeing what happened, begged Jesus to leave their region. Even though Jesus had freed these men from torment, the people were more concerned about the loss of their pigs than the miracle that had just taken place. This encounter shows us that Jesus has authority over the spiritual realm as well. The forces of evil recognize his power, and they are no match for him. But it also shows that not everyone welcomes Jesus, even when he brings healing and freedom. This story is a powerful reminder that Jesus can free us from even the darkest spiritual oppression, but we have to be willing to receive him and embrace his authority in our lives. Matthew chapter 8 is filled with miracles, healing, deliverance, and power over nature. Through these events, we see that Jesus' authority is comprehensive. He is Lord over sickness, creation, and spiritual forces, and his heart is always to bring healing, restoration, and freedom. In our next episode, we'll move into chapter 9, where Jesus continues his healing ministry and calls his disciples. Thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to continuing this journey through Matthew's Gospel with you.